In this demonstration, I'm going to talk about cell security in TM1, and specifically how improvements in TM1 10.2 allow you to more easily design and maintain cell security and get better performance from it. First, let's quickly go over what cell security is. In a TM1 model, a cube is defined by two or more dimensions, like this one. It stores data descriptively so that I can easily look at different perspectives. I can slice and dice this cube to look at the data by any of, in this case, 4 dimensions: state, version, months, and very easily slice and dice and nest that cube to see it any way I like. When I want to secure the data, I have some choices. I can use cube security, so if I want to restrict access to my entire salary cube by group, I can do that very easily at the cube level. If the group a user is a member of doesn't have access, they don't see the cube. Simple. As an example, here's a simple application I've created that has 3 views. And these are based on 3 different cubes. I've set cube security up so that a group only has access to my 2 project-based views and not to my salary plan. If I take a look at my contributor application, logged in as my user Bob, you'll notice I see these 2 views for my detailed and summary project forecast, but I don't see the salary plan. Easy. Now, if I want more granular control, I can secure elements or members within the dimensions that make up a cube. So I can easily allow a particular user access to 1 or more sales divisions or regions, etc., but not to others. Element security allows you to easily set security for dimension elements in any cube. So this is going to be across all the cubes where that dimension is used. For example, I could set my actuals version to read so that no one can make changes to my actuals, which is popular with a few notable companies, but it's a practice seriously frowned upon by the SEC and other regulators. So I like to secure my actuals with read-only security. If we take a look at the element security that I have for my versions, we can see that here. Set access permission for elements of my versions dimension, and you can see that I've set my actuals in a prior forecast period to be read-only, whereas my new forecast versions are writable. Similarly, as we can see in our contributor application here, I've also secured the user Bob to only have access to those regions or those states that fall within the region South. I use element security for that because I know that it's going to be true across the model. There is no part of this model where I expect him to see states which are in the Midwest or the Northeast or anything like that. What we want to focus on here, though, is cell security. And this is what you'll want to use when element security doesn't afford you enough control over specific data intersections in a cube. For example, I may have a rolling forecast where years and months are 2 different dimensions. So fairly common. So if I scroll over here, we've got a forecast for 2015. We've probably got actuals for 2015 as well. And we probably want to close those forecast periods that are no longer open, that have actuals. A couple of different ways we can do that. But one of the easy ways that we can do that is using cell security. So if we take a look here at Q4, now I actually want to be able to write to November and December of Q4. But if I look at 2016, I need to be able to write to January through November if I'm forecasting 12 months out. So these are 2 different dimensions. Element security isn't going to do it for us, because if we make October, November, December, and so on read-only for the sake of 2016, they're going to be read-only in 2015. We need to get more granular in our control. Cell security is how we do that. So let's take a look at this cube here. It's a very simple, very small cube. We've just got these 4 dimensions. But the only 2 dimensions I care about, the only relationship I care about here is between months and versions. So I'm going to configure security and set access permission for cube cells. Now, cell security has been around since version 9 of TM1, but previously you would have had to create a cell security cube that had every dimension in the cube that you're trying to secure. So in this case, it would have had 4 dimensions, and I'd have had to create this set of permissions that you see here. I've already created these that give me write access to the forecast for 2016, read only for the forecast in 2015, except for November and December. Similarly here, I've made November and December read only because I'm only looking for 12 months of data from my contributors. So we could have done this before. We'd have had to do this for every state, and there's a lot of overhead in that. And in fact, what you'd have almost always had to do was use rules to set the permissions, because you simply couldn't maintain that with a import process or manually with users or an administrator setting what the appropriate permissions were. And you'd have also had some performance implications of creating that large cube to query through that had these individual permission settings on that cube. Now we have a very simple cube that only has the dimensions I need, which are of course my versions and months, where I want to set that relationship, and then finally the groups that are going to be having those permissions. We will set that at the group level as well. Now there's nothing wrong with creating rules or using cube calculations, links, and so on to define the security on this cube, but you probably don't have to anymore for a lot of these types of relationships that have a lower dimensionality than the overall cube. I'm going to show you how this is done and how well it performs by doing it on a slightly larger cube. Now I'm just going to grab my permissions here, copying those so that I can use them in my other cube, but I want to show you this detailed project forecast cube. So this cube is a bit larger than that simple example, only one extra dimension, but that dimension has got about 60 or 70,000 elements in it. We can take a quick look at that. So let's look at our project dimension, and you'll see here this is just got a numeric indicator for the project, and we've got quite a long list of those. If I click on the project dimension, we'll see in fact 63,552 elements. So that's making the overall cube significantly larger. Certainly not huge, but more realistic. Now let's set cell security on this cube. The first thing we'll get prompted with is to choose which dimensions we want to use to create that cell security. So you recall our key relationship here is between months and versions, and that's all we really need for this cell security cube. So again, lower dimensionality, I'll pick the group that I want. I'm going to take all of my contributors. I'm going to spin this around so that I'll be able to paste just as I had copied from the other cube. And now with manual input, I have set cell security on a 5-dimension cube, one of those dimensions having over 60,000 elements. So hopefully you'll be able to appreciate this was not possible in the past to do a simple copy and paste to maintain this level of security relationship, certainly when I'd have had to do that to so many cells, most of those unnecessary. And if we go back to our application, we can see that applied here in this detailed project forecast, where I've got open periods for contribution in my forecast 2015 version for November and December, and in my forecast 2016 up to the end of October I've got open periods as well. While we can't guarantee any performance given the number of variables in any model, what I can say is that for this fairly large cube at around 3/4 of a gigabyte, I'm using less than 20 megabytes of memory for my cell security. So that's a very significant improvement versus creating that many dimension cell security cube. It makes it a lot easier to maintain. We can now do that with a Turbo Integrator process for automation. In many cases we can even have users input that data, or an administrator input that data. I hope you found this demonstration useful. Thanks for your time.